The topic of my presentation is the theme of social injustice in the Polish translation of Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. The purpose of my presentation is to analyze the theme of social injustice in the Polish translation to see how the theme of social injustice was translated. The subject of scrutiny includes the Polish translation of Oliver Twist that was rendered anonymously in 1845. In order to carry out the analysis, it is to be seen what changes occurred in the theme of social injustice between the source and the target language. The analysis includes a number of translational parameters. Those parameters are translation shifts by Catford, disambiguation by Hatim and Monday, and direct and oblique translation techniques by Vinay and Dalbernay. Dickens and social injustice. Dickens is often associated with human suffering. He was famous for his sensitivity to human injustice, to human suffering. The fate of the weak, the defenseless, was not indifferent to Dickens, and it was visible in his novels. He tried to attract readers' attention to acts of injustice in order to evoke the feelings of empathy in his readers. When analyzing Dickens's life, it's not so obvious whether he was a radical reformer or not. It's obvious that Dickens's sensitivity flows from his heart and is genuine. However, his intention was not to ignite a rebellion, but rather provide his readers with ideas to begin the transformation of the fossilized social system. Translation shifts. The term translation shift was coined by Catford, the linguist, and it can be defined as departures from formal correspondence in the process of going from the source language to the target language. Another definition specifies that shifts, these are the small linguistic changes that occur between the source and the target language. In translation studies, the notion of translation shift is often referred to as cross-linguistic difference, reformulation, interference, explicitation, or conversion. Direct and oblique procedures. Those were presented by two Canadian scholars, Jean-Paul Vinay and Jean Dalbernay, in 1995, who divided the procedures into two categories, direct and oblique procedures. Within the group of direct translation procedures, we can identify borrowing, calque, literal translation, and within the group of oblique translation procedures, there are transposition, modulation, equivalence, and adaptation. Disambiguation is the concept that is often referred to in the domain of semantics. Its basic definition states that it is choosing the meaning of ambiguous words according to the context. We can talk about the so-called semantic and lexical disambiguation. When it comes to disambiguation, such factors as knowledge and experience also play, translators' knowledge and experience also play a substantial role. Disambiguation is a part of the so-called translation universals. Translation analysis. The first sample concerns the divorce regulations in Oliver Twist. In the target version, we can see multiple shifts in the form of additions that are marked in bold, modulation marked in italics, and adaptation underlined. Additions seem to dominate in this specific sample, as a result of which the target text seems more inclined towards connotative meaning, seems more emotional compared with its source counterpart. The second sample refers to the situation of women in Oliver Twist. Shifts that are visible, they are in the form of modulation in italics, equivalence in bold, and adaptation underlined. This time the dominant ones, these are modulation and adaptation. It's as if the translator paraphrases the original in order to make the meaning more explicit and understandable to the Polish reader. The third sample refers to the appalling conditions of boys working as chimney sweeps in Oliver Twist. Shifts present in that sample. These are in the form of modulation in italics, adaptation underlined, and addition in bold. Again, this sample is more a paraphrase of the original. The fourth sample, it is about the attitude of the English authorities towards violence and social injustice. It is about children and how they are treated. Shifts that are present in the target text. These are in the form of adaptation and addition. We can say that the target text is a form of a paraphrase, but because of the additions, its impact is more emotional. Emotions are intensified. There is a fragment where the meaning has been distorted. This is to do with the number of boys. In the original, we have 3 or 4 boys, and in the translation Umtritschem, which can be translated as 2 or 3. So as we can see, the translator as if tried to alleviate the drama, perhaps, and as a result the meaning has been altered. Another sample is about the ways of the English authorities tried to get rid of orphans in Oliver Twist. The shifts visible, these are in the form of modulation in italics, addition in bold, literal translation and transposition underlined. This time the translator tried to adhere to the source text on the one hand, but on the other, in parts, especially the part at the bottom of the target text, tried to use some explanation, paraphrase, to clarify the meaning to the Polish reader. The final sample refers to violence towards children in Oliver Twist. The dominant shifts, these are modulation and adaptation. This is typically a paraphrase in terms of the translation procedure. Those samples, in those samples there were multiple shifts used. Those shifts, they were mainly addition, modulation, adaptation, equivalence. transposition and literal translation. In the samples where addition appeared, the impact of the target text in terms of emotions was stronger compared with the original. Conclusions. The purpose of the presentation was to analyze the theme of social injustice in the Polish translation of Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. It is clear that the dominant shifts and the most frequent semantic alterations are present in samples referring to the divorce regulations, the situation of women, and violence towards children. In the theme of social injustice, the dominant shifts are modulation, adaptation, and addition. The translator paraphrases the source text in the attempt to explain the meaning to the Polish reader. The application of additions results in intensifying the emotional impact in the target text. As a result, the theme of social injustice in the analyzed samples is more explicit emotionally and semantically in the Polish translation than in its source counterpart. It is to be noted that the analysis is not finite, and supposedly further analysis of issues concerning social injustice would contribute to a wider perspective of the examined issue. Thank you for your attention.